Recently, I read the story of a boy from one of our local middle schools, and his story really tore me up a little bit. This young man chose death over returning to a school where he felt unaccepted, unwanted, and unimportant. This sent my mind tumbling back over the years to my 7th grade experience. His name was Ron. He was thin, not particularly athletic, and generally alone. Ron made an easy target for the cruelty of faculty and his fellow students. Before I go on, please allow me to explore and examine bullying. The word itself, bullying, is not nearly dark enough or disgusting enough or destructive enough and not nearly hateful enough to describe the realities of what is actually done to another human being. When we place ugly and undeserved labels on another, when we fail to include another, when we do all we can to assure that they are always rejected, always alone, always hurting, we destroy them from the inside out. We deprive them of a basic, essential human need. We become the very devil himself. We become the spawn of hell, and we revel in it like it were a badge of honor. Ron, because of his physical attributes, he was unable to lift the weight of his own body and complete a required rope climb in our gym class. My heart hurt as I watched and heard a harsh and cruel teacher degrade and belittle and demean him for failing to do that which was beyond his abilities. I was repulsed and disgusted by the blackened heart of this horrible man. Ron was generally alone because the pecking order at our school placed him squarely and firmly on the bottom. Each day of his life was filled with taunting, teasing, insult, and injury. With shoulders drooping and head down, he trudged through each day. Those days combined to form his miserable, unendurable existence. One day, for whatever reason, Ron and I were the only 2 kids in the neighborhood. We spent some time together and ended up in his bedroom where we did the things that boys do, that friends do. Literally, there was nothing wrong with this young man except for those ugly and hurtful things that people threw at him until they stuck. To my everlasting shame, when I was among my other friends, I was a far different person. Integrity was replaced with the demands of peer pressure. I became one of Ron's antagonizers. One fall day, after a successful deer hunt, I carried with me some venison jerky to share with my friends. Like the despicable, hateful, evil trash that we were, we hatched a plan. We rubbed one piece of that jerky on a urinal and then sought out Ron to share. I can only imagine his relief and gratitude when we offered to share this jerky with him. I cannot begin to comprehend the depths of his pain, his sorrow, the absolute hurt that he must have felt when we laughed and told him the whole truth. I don't remember if it was just days or maybe weeks after that incident that I heard the news. Ron reached a point where he simply could not face another day. Slowly, ever so slowly, he walked into his father's barn. He found a length of rope there and he tied it to a high rafter. There were some wooden crates nearby, so he stacked them beneath the dangling rope and he began to climb. There must have been a river of bitter tears as he tied the rope around his neck and carefully checked the knot to ensure that it would hold. I often wonder how long he stood there on those crates. What pain passed through his mind? How unbearable was the horrible cold that encircled and gripped his young heart? I can only imagine that there was one final, horrible, agonizing cry of anguish when he found the courage to kick the life-giving crates away. The tragedy did not end there. His father entered the barn to do his evening chores. Now, being a father myself, I can only imagine what he must have felt when his eyes saw and his mind comprehended that horrible scene. Frantically, he administered CPR to his lifeless son. I wonder about the prayers that he surely uttered with a shaking voice and over-trembling lips. When it became clear that Ron could not be revived, I see him defiantly continuing, against all hope, against all odds. He couldn't stop. This was his beloved son. I see this father slowly walking toward his home. He now faced the unimaginable task of telling his wife that which he could scarcely bear to speak. The overwhelming weight of that burden must have made that short walk as 1,000 brutal miles. In my mind's eye, I see him enter the kitchen and look upon his beautiful wife. When she finally looked up, surely she knew that something was terribly, horribly wrong. No doubt, they came together and embraced. She could do nothing more than hold him and wait while he fought back the sobs and struggled to gain control. I wonder if her trembling body crumpled to the floor when the truthfulness of her husband's words could no longer be denied. This is the first time I have shared the complete story of my guilt. This is my confession, my admission. This is my everlasting shame. The memory of Ron has been with me over 40 years now. Though I have to some degree found peace with God, this is far, far from resolved. The day will come when I will stand before Ron, or perhaps fall at his feet. I will beg through bitter tears for his forgiveness. This I do know. He will willingly give it. He was always a much better person than I. I don't share these things to point blame or condemn any individual. This is not an act of anger or judgment. It is a simple and heartfelt plea for people everywhere to do something good. In the case of Ron, there were those who saw what was happening and did nothing, and I was among them. I chose to not hear Ron's silent, agonizing cries. I chose to not see the pain in his eyes. I chose a coward's way. What if I had just allowed my one day of friendship with Ron to continue? Would one good friend have made a difference for him? And what about you? This type of thing is all around us. Do you have the courage to befriend the friendless? Do you have the strength to say no when cruelty becomes the norm? Do you? Do I? Jesus said, "Greater love hath no man than this, that he lay down his life for his friends." Does this require that we die for a friend? No. No, of course not. This means that we live for a friend. This means that we lay down the days of our lives in love, in service, in acceptance. This means that we follow the Master.